Is there not an entire section on this subject?
Yes, so it's unfair. I may have changed my mind about ether, for example.
Is your book for sale in the back?
Yes, it is.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness?
I'm not sure. I just go and try and do a better job.
Let me tell you.
Say it like you mean it. This is my Bible.
Yo, Trey.
What up?
I got something to say.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Let Me Tell You, episode 101. I'm your host, Norm, the Master's Dog Dunham, a.k.a. the Evangelical Norm. So again, I just wanted to say thanks for everybody who's been riding along with us for the last 100 plus episodes, because of all the episodes we did way back when that weren't called Let Me Tell You. So you guys have been with us for a while, and again, I just really appreciate everybody who's been part of this podcast for the last 3-4 years, as long as I've been doing it. So for those of you who might be new, I would really love it if right now you would go ahead and hit that subscribe button on YouTube, give the video a like, share it, hit the notifications button, because apparently all that stuff blows up the algorithms and then people really like us or something like that. Or you can subscribe over on Gab TV. That is rapidly becoming kind of my preferred social media over Facebook and Twitter. So you can go over to Gab TV and subscribe. The same content that's coming out over here on YouTube is coming out over there without any kind of threat or worry about being canceled or censored, or, I mean, I'm not monetized over there. I'm not monetized over here on YouTube. Apparently everything I do prevents me from being monetized in some way or another. So I'm not doing any of this for money or to make money or anything like that. I do this because I feel like God has given me something to say, and I want to say it. So, and you guys have been a huge part of that. So once again, thank you. If you are subscribed or you do follow the podcast, and of course you can get the audio podcasts on Amazon, Google Play, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, you can get it. For some reason, last week, the Master's Dog did not update to Google Play, but it went everywhere else. So I don't know what that was all about, but I'm trying to figure that one out. But you can grab the audio if you don't have time to sit down and watch a 30-minute video. You can, just download it as an MP3 from any of those places, put it in your earbuds, and take us along with you while you're doing whatever it is that you have to do. So again, thank you, and that's all our intro for today, and we are going to talk a little bit about this week. CPAC happened, which, if you don't know what CPAC is, it's the Conservative Political Action Committee. I think that's what it stands for. But this is like the Comic-Con for conservatives in America. This is where all the conservatives get to come together and do their big thing. It used to be a very much, for the most part, it was like a Christian conference. But here's the reality of where we stand in 2021. And this is my opinion. So this is the way I look at things from a Christian worldview. So if you are a Christian, you really should be a conservative in some way, shape, or form. It's very hard for a Christian to reconcile the Christian beliefs, what is taught in the Bible, with any kind of liberal beliefs or anything like that. As a Christian with a biblical worldview, what we believe should line up far more with conservative values than liberal values. But the reality is whereas most Christians, and I can't even say all Christians are conservative, I would say all Christians should be conservative. They aren't. By no means are all conservatives Christian. There's a lot of conservatives who would claim they are Christian who are obviously not. For more on that, go back to my last couple of unsolicited episodes where I entered into a 2 to 3 week long beef with a rapper who claims to be Christian named Mises. And just, yeah, check those out. That'll break it down. But he's definitely conservative, but by no means can I consider this man, based on the music that he willingly puts out and writes and stuff like that, can I consider him to be a Christian. So that's the reality of it. Excuse me. This conference, this CPAC get together every year, is by no means a convergence of Christian worldviews into one place. It is all over the place. And I mean, in reality, I don't even know that I would consider it to be completely conservative as I look at the path that it's gone down. I mean, Donald Trump was their keynote speaker this year. Of course, he was the Republican president. He was the nominee 4 years ago, and when I first left the Republican Party. So obviously, he is kind of the ensign bearer of the conservative movement. But the reality is Donald Trump is not that conservative. I mean, he's definitely pro-life than a lot of the past presidents that we've had. But he's very much pro-LGBTQ. He is not 100% for biblical marriage, for traditional marriage. So there's a lot of places where Donald Trump does not fall into conservatism. But the reality is, over the last 4 years, is a lot of conservatism has become a cult-like following for Donald Trump, and to the point that they're compromising worldviews and things like that. So very weird dynamic that has happened over the last little bit with conservatism. I truly think that, and this is something a friend of mine, Zach Freiberg, said years back, and I, at that point, I didn't believe him, but I'm starting to think that it's becoming more and more going to be heading that direction, that we're going to end up with a 4-party system. We're truly going to end up with a 4-party system. We're going to have what CPAC looks like now, and we're going to take a little bit of a look at that. So we're going to have a conservative party that is disconnected with Christian beliefs and worldview. So we'll have a conservative party. We will have a Christian party. We will have a liberal or leftist or Democrat party, what the Democrats had been for a while, and then we're going to have a socialist party. So we're going to have, I mean, it's going to be even more fractured over probably not in the next 10 years, but I mean, by the time we get to the 2040 presidential election, I firmly believe we're going to have a 4-party system, or at least at that point in time, we're going to end up with a 3-party system and a viable third party that is very much Christian in their worldview, but not associated with the Republican / conservative party that we see today. And it's really going to depend on whether or not you can get leaders like people who were part of that, the CPAC conference this time around, Ted Cruz, and so on, if you're going to see them be willing to stand firm on their Christian beliefs and not just coalesce into the conservative party to save their jobs, essentially their seats in Congress or Senate or wherever they are currently. It may be that we have to have a whole new group of Christian leaders coming up, and there is a push for it. There is a push for it especially among Reformed churches and stuff like that. There is becoming more and more of a push for Christians in those congregations and in those churches to get more involved politically, running for office, and so on. Because again, if we truly want to bring our country back to a Christian worldview and a truly a Christian standpoint, which is basically what we believe it was founded on, then we're going to have to see actual Bible-believing Christians running for office more and more in the future. I made a couple of statements recently that I'm really thinking about running for more of a local office here in 2022, and then we'll see where it goes from that as we potentially move up into higher offices and so on, if we even get elected here. So all that to be said, I want to take a little bit of a look at what went down at CPAC this week. And again, I'm not even looking at the speeches or anything like that. I didn't listen to a single one. I don't think I've ever listened to a single speech in any CPAC conference, anytime, ever. I don't think I've never really, it's not been something that I've gone, I have to listen to this. But I'm just looking at the things that blew up on social media that could not be denied. Okay, these are things that just a couple of things that caused the social media, especially like leftist Twitter, to lose their freaking minds, but not that it was stuff that they made up. And so thus the title of this week's podcast, this week's episode, is CPAC 2021. Is it conservative, cult-like, or simply childish? And so we're actually going to work through that, in not necessarily in that order. But first of all, we're going to take a look at this is just ridiculous. So apparently they sold Nancy Pelosi toilet paper at this year's CPAC. And you know what? They may have sold this at every CPAC. I don't know. I just saw a picture of somebody buying Nancy Pelosi toilet paper at CPAC this year, and I'm thinking to myself, how did we get so childish as a conservative movement? How did childishness become one of our core values? I mean, we watched it with Donald Trump in 2016, and I made multiple statements about how this was like the most immature president we've ever had, made those statements throughout his presidency, still believe those things to be true today. This dude was like 70 going on 7, calling names of all of his opponents like a bully on an elementary school playground, right? This was what Donald Trump was, and this is what has led into ridiculous stuff like this. I mean, as conservatives, I mean, if we're truly looking and trying to act Christian, how does this fall in any way, shape, or form to love your enemy, right? Which Christ called us to do. I mean, it was the whole premise of part of the beef that I had last week and the week before with Mises was, is there love? They'll know us by our love, by if we love one another, they'll know that you are my disciples. Jesus says, if you love one another, and that's a love within the church. We are told to love our neighbor as ourselves. This was one of the 2 great commandments that Jesus gave, which means those who are not in the church, because again, if we look biblically, we can literally break down the people in the Bible into brothers and neighbors. Brothers are those that are within the body. Neighbors are those who are without. And then, of course, you have where Jesus says, love your enemies, which, again, personally, from a Christian worldview, I would say the only enemy I have is Satan. But we do have, when we break it down to the reality, we look at people as our enemies. And Jesus said, okay, if you're not going to look at those people as your neighbor and you're going to consider them to be your enemy, well, love your enemy. Yeah, and so how is this? The majority of conservative political Christians and conservative politicians, whatever, would consider Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and those on the left, they consider them to be the enemy. And so thus the reason why they would end up on toilet paper. As I looked up this picture, I found Joe Biden toilet paper, Hillary Clinton toilet paper. I'm sure it's all available on the other side. You can get Ted Cruz toilet paper, Donald Trump toilet paper. Because this is where our world has gone. This is where we have gone as a people, that we find it somehow humorous to wipe the feces off of our backsides with the picture of somebody we just simply disagree with. And I don't know how that falls into any way, shape, or form what Jesus said as loving your neighbor or loving your enemy or even, loving your brother. I mean, it's so ridiculous and so childish. And this is not, this is probably why I've never really been a part of these conservative groups, because I don't want to associate with this kind of garbage. This is just ridiculous. This is childish. This literally is elementary school antics. This is what somebody does in elementary school or junior high. They go into the bathroom and they draw the person that they don't like on the toilet paper. Ooh, this is so funny. But obviously people are doing it because people are willing to pay the money, because they're willing to, and these guys are making money off of it. It's the whole attitude of, it doesn't matter, and this is not a truthful for those of us who are truly Christian and want to see our politics go back to a Christian worldview, but it's owning the libs. It literally is. I mean, I saw my cousin post something about this and well, it doesn't matter anything, nothing matters except for owning the libs. And that has become essentially a reality. That's how Donald Trump got nominated 4 years ago, because the way he talked, and people were like, oh, we just love the way he's all himself and he just talks the way he wants to talk and he just says it like it is and da-da-da-da-da. But ultimately it was because he was owning the libs, owning the left. Those on the, and he was just, but he was also doing it to those on the right. So, I mean, he just didn't care. He's a all access bully, right? He doesn't care who he bullies as long as it benefits him. And it truly is childish. It is the most childish thing that I've ever seen come along in conservative politics. And it just continues to get worse and worse and worse as people become more cult-like in their following of those people who think, well, I can get elected or I can do this and I can do that if I just, talk down to and own the libs. And that's just, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's got us following people that Christians should not follow. Right? I mean, I look at, and I'm going to probably have as a false teacher of the week sometime coming up in the future, Officer Tatum, who has a podcast and so on like this. Dude absolutely denies the Trinity. So he's definitely not Christian, but Christians follow him because he says what they want to hear and he owns the libs. And he's a black guy that kind of agrees with their worldview of what they want to hear, right? And so, but he's a false teacher. He's literally a false teacher. He is a heretical teaching. He teaches a heretical view of who God is. So yeah, I mean, it's become so weird that this is the backbone of the conservative movement, Nancy Pelosi toilet paper. And then the other thing that I saw, which there's a part of me that goes, okay, this is just ridiculous. But the other part of me goes, somebody should have known better. Somebody should have known that someone on the left was going to look this up. And I mean, you cannot deny, and if you can't see the picture on the screen, the stage, the way they did and designed the stage is literally a replica of a symbol that was put on Nazi uniforms. And it's kind of like this diamond with, it's not quite a swastika, but it's like an upside down diamond with horns, some kind of thing. You can look it up. I hope you're watching the video and you can see it. But here's the thing. I believe that conservatives are white supremacists? No. In no way, shape, or form do I think that conservatism equates to white supremacy. Do I believe there are some white supremacists in the conservative movement? Well, of course. They're there. There are white supremacists out there. There are racists out there. There are neo-Nazis out there. But the entire conservative movement, I would hopefully be able to say the majority of the conservative movement would denounce stuff like this. But somebody had to know. Somebody had to look into this. Somebody had to go maybe we don't build the stage like this. I mean, I don't even know what the functionality of having this kind of design and setup for a stage is. I don't know that these little horns going towards the back are really functional in any way to be a portion of the stage, to be useful. Somebody designed it. Somebody should have gone, yeah, maybe we should redesign it. But again, what this did is it opened the door for everybody on the left to just go nuts about, oh, here we go, white supremacy, in the conservative movement, and they're all so racist, and they're all just, neo-Nazis and blah, 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 blah. I mean, this was something that could have easily been avoided. Is it ridiculous? Yes. But these are the things. Again, from a Christian worldview, we look at the Bible and it says that we should be above reproach. As those who follow God, especially as leaders and so on, should be above reproach. So this should be something that if we're going to be above reproach, we would go, yeah, that's not really what we wanted to do. But the thing is no one on the right is coming out and going, well, yeah, we might have messed up on this. Be willing to admit when you did something stupid, right? This is part of the Christian worldview and so on, is admitting when we screw up. Not just, sweeping it under the rug and hoping it goes away with time, which is what this is. And essentially it will. I mean, ultimately it will go away with time. This was not as huge of a thing. This is the next thing we're going to talk about. But this was just dumb. And I saw this and I went, do better. Do better. Come on. Really you should stop and think about these things. And somebody had to know. Somebody in one of these design groups or something like that had to go, this is probably not the best idea. I mean, literally could have just taken off part of the stage and made it just like the diamond with two things going back into the backstage, two runways coming out, and not having to have these little offshoots that literally turned it into a replica of a Nazi symbol. So do I think this was, sinful, wrong? No, it's just stupid. It's just dumb, and somebody should have known better. Somebody should have caught it and went, yeah, this is just way too much ammunition to give to those on the left, and should have just nipped this stuff in the bud. But here's the most ridiculous thing that went down at CPAC. And this is why I really honestly think CPAC has lost all connection with its Christian roots. Because to make a golden statue of Donald Trump and cart it around so people can take pictures with it, there are literally pictures of people bowing down to it, which, I mean, I'm assuming has to be, in jest, but, I mean, that's the picture that is floating around out there. People bowing down to this golden statue of Donald Trump. And it literally, I mean, it's like, did Kevin Smith from the Clerks and Mallrats and Jay and Silent Bob, was he behind the entire planning of the CPAC conference in 2021? I mean, because this is the ridiculous, I mean, this is the Buddy Christ from the movie Dogma and Mooby the Golden Calf from the same movie joined together, and we give you, golden idol Trump. And apparently they're selling it. Someone bought it, or they tried to sell it, or I'm sure someone bought it for $100,000. Somebody bought and now has this life-sized, I mean, it's like 6 foot tall golden statue of Donald Trump in their home. And this is ridiculous. Granted, remember, I was the one that started the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. In 2016, when this was the stage that the Republican National Convention built for Donald Trump, I mean, these huge letters, Trump, across. I mean, literally, they've created their neon god. and they are bowing and praying to him. And somehow he has become this Messiah figure, that he's the only guy who can save America, which is absolutely false. But yet, and then to take all of that, and even to hear that kind of criticism coming from the right, you know, those of us who are conservative and who are Christian, who have been calling on you for 4 years, saying you are acting like a cult, you know, making the hashtag Trump cult. I started the hashtag Make Cults Great Again. And, you know, and the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. With all of that feedback coming to you, why on earth would you bring to CPAC 2021 a life-size golden statue of Donald Trump? I mean, you literally just made yourself a parody. I mean, self-parody doesn't come any finer than this. And Babylon B is mad because you are trying to put them out of business. I mean, satire doesn't exist anymore when you bring out ridiculous stuff like this. You know, I have to avoid saying ridiculousness and not have to deal with copyright infringement on MTV with the video show that they have, right? But this is stupid. This is, I mean, I don't know how many times I can say it without my daughter hearing me and coming into the room and saying, "Daddy, don't say stupid." But this is stupid. This is ridiculous. This is, I mean, conservatives played themselves with this stuff. I mean, this is not any kind of movement or anything that I ever want to have any kind of connection with ever again. Because of stupidity like this. This is the stuff that makes guys who do podcasts like me speechless. I got nothing to say, because I mean, this goes so far beyond the pale of what conservatism should be. I mean, somebody who was in charge of this whole thing should have seen this thing come into the auditorium and said, "Stop, no, take it out, because that's not who we are." Or is it? Is this who you've become, conservatives of America? Is this who you've become, Christians of America? Christians. I'm gonna put that in quotes, Christians. You know, because I almost willing to guarantee you that guys like Mises ain't gonna speak out against something like this. And I guarantee you he'd be there taking the selfies right next to that statue, because he looks at Trump and he looks at this, and with what he considers to be Christianity, there's probably nothing wrong with this. And for a lot of Christians within the conservative movement, Christians, quote unquote Christians within the conservative movement, there's nothing wrong with this. But those of us who look at the Bible and say, these are the standards by which I live, whether they line up with with political movements or not, and say we're going to put our Christian values above the political worldviews that are being pushed upon us, we recognize that this stuff should never happen. We should not be ever having any kind of connection to Christian. Now I'm talking to Christians. We should never have any kind of connection to any kind of conference or anything like that sells Nancy Pelosi toilet paper. We should never have anything to do with somebody that's so tone deaf in what's happening in the world that they would not catch on and see that they've created a stage that is a exact replica of a Nazi German soldier uniform insignia. Right? And by no means should we ever as Christians be associated with any kind of group that thinks it's okay to bring in a 6-foot golden statue of the last presidential candidate that they had. Because again, no matter what you think and no matter what the conservative movement says, Donald Trump ain't the only one. There's only one, and he died on the cross 2,000 years ago and rose from the dead and is ruling and reigning from heaven right now. And yes, he is sovereign over everything that is going on. So he was the one responsible for Donald Trump being president, and he is also the one responsible for Joe Biden being in office. And I do fully believe that both of them were judgments on this nation. We were not blessed to have Donald Trump. He may have been better for us than anyone else who could have been there, especially Hillary. But by no means was Donald Trump God's blessing upon this nation. Because nothing has changed as a nation from 2008 when not 2008, 2012 when Obama became president. No, 2008, first Obama presidency, and people were like, oh, well, Obama got elected, Jesus is still on the throne. And then 2012, when Obama won re-election, and everyone was the same thing, Obama got elected, Jesus is still on the throne. You know what I did not see from Christian America? Is in 2016 when Donald Trump won the election. I did not see any of those Jesus is still on the throne comments. But from 2000, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, nothing has changed in this country. In fact, it's gone further downhill in the legalization of gay marriage and recognition of all of the trans this and trans that and so on and so forth. The morals of this country continue to go downhill, have gone consistently downhill from 2000. And do you really think that Donald Trump was a blessing on this nation? Suddenly, somehow, some way, God said, well, I'm going to bless him for 4 years, but then we're bringing the judgment of Joe Biden. No, we have been under judgment from well before. I mean, even Ronald Reagan. I mean, this was not the huge blessing that was come upon this nation because we were still deep in sin with abortion and so on. So again, I mean, God is sovereign, and so I believe that every person who is elected president because God has ordained that. But I also look at the whole of the worldview and the things that are going on and what are we receiving from this, and I've seen president after president that I believe is God's judgment on this nation. But what I do see, and is encouraging to me now, is that I see more and more churches that are coming together and going, okay, we can no longer be those who just jump on board with these politicians that are there that are trying to claim that they have our worldview, but we need to become the politicians that are there to make our worldview happen. And we're seeing it from Apologia in Arizona to Christ Church in Moscow. We are seeing people in those churches running for office, being involved in making legislation that is not just pragmatic or anything like that, but is literally, abolition bills and things like this that say we want abortion gone. Not just lessen, we want it gone. And then trying to put people into place to help make that happen. That's what we have to do. We can no longer, as Christians, just be jumping on to the conservative worldview or the Republican worldview or anything like that. And we need to be coming in and going, this is our worldview, and we are going to forcefully advance it. And there you go. So there's my opinion on CPAC 2021. Maybe over the next couple of days, I might watch a couple of the speeches. I am kind of interested in seeing what Cruz actually said, and as much as I don't want to do it, it's probably beneficial for me to actually watch and hear what Trump had to say too. But again, without having heard any of the speeches, but just seeing the ridiculous stuff that went on there, again, it's not something that as a Christian I want to be connected with. And instead of being there in support of, I should be there doing what we all should be doing, and that's preaching the gospel at all times and using words because they're necessary. Until next week, Soli Deo Gloria.